Shakespeare once said, "What isn't a name? That which we call a rose by any other name would smell as sweet." But do the Hugh Jazzes and Maya Buttreeks of the world agree with the bard about their unique names? And what do researchers have to say about the impact of silly, strange, or embarrassing names on the people who have them? You're listening to Real Stories, Real Problems with Rachael and Roxanne.
Hi, Rachel. How are you today?
I'm good, Roxanne. How are you?
I wanted to smack the ever-loving bejesus out of the parents of some of these people.
Yeah.
I
This was a really interesting movie. This is a documentary called The Strange Name Movie.
Mm-hmm.
And it's literally
Oh.
a group that went and called basically everyone they could find that had a weird name to invite them to talk about their experiences with their names and what it was like growing up like this and how it's impacted their adult lives and all of this stuff. And they found some people with some fantastically weird names.
Absolutely.
They talked to Mark Gotobed, Joe Doctor, who is an attorney, Stuart Putz, Tom and Jessica Klutz, Howard Schmuck, Linda Slutsky, Greg Bogus, Henry Crapo, somebody whose last name was Malarkey, a woman named Smokey Bacon. Like, they found...
And Paul and Linda McCartney.
Yeah. Donald Duck Jr. and Sr. and the third and like...
fourth and oh my God. And
yeah.
more Ronald McDonalds than you could possibly assemble under one roof.
Yeah, and so they are talking to these people about what their names were like. And so they each have like a little personal story that they tell about their names. A man named Richard Gay tells a story of being beaten up and ridiculed by other kids and eventually trying to overcompensate for his name in ways that led him to become an alcoholic because he was just so...
And
miserable.
I understand that because he looked only a few years older than I am. And my mother's stepfather, who was born like turn of the century, I think, his first name was Gay. But again, at that time, and and it was a New England family name, and being from it was a different time, different sort of place. But growing up in my class, there was a boy with the last name of Gay, and he overcompensated very much. And I felt very bad for him. He was not, in fact, gay, but he was kind of an asshole. And he was an asshole because people kept, using the slurs, the F slur for, and I felt very, very bad for him.
Yeah, one guy talked about being bullied for his name so badly that he ended up becoming a stand-up comedian.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember if that was Paul Nardizzi or...
No, it was the other guy.
Al Dente.
That him. That's...
Yeah, and there was a woman named Barb Dwyer, Barb, last name Dwyer, who at that point you can go by Barbara.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that's a thing you've kind of done to yourself a little bit.
Right.
But they like having names that are a gimmick. Like some people, when they have a name that is gimmicky, they feel like they can lean into that and turn that into something. Smokey Bacon, one of the women that they talked to in the documentary, is very, very old. Like, she was born and made fun of in the 1940s.
Right.
Based on her name Smokey, because smoking was considered uncouth for women.
Right. Only, loose and easy women smoke.
Yeah, so that was the bullying she got for that name,
right,
which would have been very different if she had been born in 1980 or 1990. It would have been a different making fun of.
Yeah.
But she leaned into it, and she said it made her easily memorable and identifiable, and she kind of turned it into a brand and used it to further her career, which was way better than some of these people dealt with. There was a guy named Tim Burr.
Oh,
his,
God.
His mother, Gladys, we got to talk to her
Mm-hmm.
about how she was pregnant and they were trying to come up with a name, and somebody at a party was like, you should name the baby Tim, and that way you could call him Tim Burr.
Mm-hmm.
And Gladys and her husband,
with it. Mm-hmm.
they were just like, yeah, that's great. And so, like, she would call him by his full name to come running home, when she would lean out the door to call for the kids. And, like, she really thought this was fantastic. And she said if she had it to do over again, she would do it exactly the same way, and that she sees no problem with him having a silly name. And granted, Tim Burr is one of the least silly names we saw
Yes.
in this documentary, but it still feels mean.
It feels very mean. And I remember very clearly on my street, there was this woman who had 2 kids, and she would open the door and she would just scream, Mimi, Joey. And wherever they were, you'd hear, come in. And that's all I could think of was this woman, Gladys, opening her door and screaming, Timber, and getting the same kick out of it the 500th time as she did the first.
Yeah, and I mean, I had some people with unique names that I've interacted with throughout the course of my life. And I'm not going to share all of them because some of them are very easily identifiable.
Of course.
But I did go to school with somebody whose last name was Overy. I did have a boss at one point at a company I worked for. His last name was Raper. There are people who have unfortunate names that are basically damned to be mocked.
Yeah.
There is no world where you can expect everyone to treat your child with politeness and respect when they have a name like that. And some people in the documentary said that they were told that it would toughen them up to have a name like that. And science has since proven that you cannot toughen kids up by making fun of them.
Right.
It causes deep mental and emotional scars.
Yes, it does.
It ruins lives.
It does.
So when you give a sensitive child a hard time because you think that they need to learn to be less sensitive, all they're learning is that you are an asshole. And it does nothing to get them ready for the real world. And in fact, sometimes makes it harder for people to function in a day-to-day life as an adult because they have put up with this type of bullying from people who are supposed to love them.
Right. Right.
And I mean, your name is not odd, but given the song, I'm sure you have dealt with...
My mother got my name from a Name the Baby book. And everybody made fun of my name in grammar school because it was unusual. They thought it was spelled Rockksand, and they called me Rocks in the Head and Rockhead, and I hated it. Then 1979 came around, and the Police came out with that fucking song. And it has been, to this day, I can't tell you how every single time, even at age 58, when I extend my hand at work and have to say my name out loud for the first time, are they going to be an asshole? And they all think they're the first to ever hear that song. No. This is the first time in 45 years anyone's ever done that. And the thing is, nobody knows what that song is really about. It is about a whore. It's about a whore, the red light district. Nobody knows that. They just know that scream at the beginning, and they think it's funny. And I hate it so, so much. I shouldn't have anxiety at my age in a business situation where that is even a possibility. How do you feel about your name?
I really like my name.
I think your name's beautiful.
I feel like my name fits me. I feel like it's not something to be made fun of, which is great because there's a bunch of other shit people can make fun of me for, and my name does not need to be added onto that list.
No.
And I like that my name has a little bit of a different spelling.
I like how you spell your name.
And my name came from a child's soccer uniform. My parents were talking about naming me Heather until they saw a little girl playing soccer with a bunch of other kids, and she had Rachel on the back of her uniform. And they were like, no, that's it. That's the name.
Mm-hmm.
I like that they saw a kid out there and were like, that child seems happy and the
Well adjusted. So, yeah.
And so, yeah, that works for me. And when my husband and I chose my daughter's name, a lot of thought went into both if she was going to be a girl or if she was going to be a boy, to make sure that she had a name that had some meaning and was connected to the family and did all the things, but also was not immediately mockable and that was employable, so that she would not have trouble getting a job later as an adult due to her name.
Yeah, couldn't get a nasty nickname out of, I mean, I had to correct a customer who keeps coming back to the point where I hide now when I see him coming. He calls me Rocks. Nobody calls me that. And I had to stop him, and I said, guy's name, I really don't go by Rocks. I am 58 years old. I'm in a professional setting. You don't assume a nickname on a total stranger. You don't. You call them by the name that they introduce themselves as. That's on my lanyard. My name, Roxanne, is on my lanyard. If I went by Rocks, that's what, Oh, God. I'm like so hyped up over this one.
Well, and one of the things is there are thousands of different types of people. People are very comfortable in public and people who are not, and people, you don't know who you're interacting with.
Exactly.
And have I told you the pickle story?
I don't think so. Do share.
So I deal with a decent amount of anxiety among
really
both
of us. Yep.
And I was at the grocery store and I had like 2 or 3 things and it was not a big deal. And this guy got in line behind me and he was very jokey with the cashier. And he was like, hey, she's going to pay for my pickles, because he just had a jar of pickles.
Okay.
And I looked at him and I was like, no, I'm not. And I could see in his eyes that he was like, no, play along with me. Do the joke with me. And he was like, no, it's okay. It's just a jar of pickles. And I looked dead at him and I was like, no, I'm not paying for anything of yours, because I don't know if he actually meant this is a joke. And I don't know if the cashier would pick up that that's a joke.
Right.
And then I don't want there to be no, she's supposed to pay and now she's leaving. No, I don't need any of that. You've now.
What a weird story.
Yeah. But that guy, I am 100% certain, was trying to be affable and friendly and funny, but he did it in a way that was weird and uncomfortable. And not even in like a weird sexual way where you would know, but in a way that just triggered something for me.
He was being too intimate.
Well, too intimate, and also like I am an innate people pleaser. I will open a vein if it makes somebody else happy. I am I need to do for other people. That's just how I am. And so when somebody steps in and asks something of me, my instinct is just to do it.
Yeah.
And so if I did not set down a boundary, there is a chance I would have handed over my credit card to just pay for that guy's pickles, because I'm going with the joke. And no, I could not let myself get in that space. I needed to have that boundary. He does not know that about me.
Right.
He wouldn't know, but I just was not in a place where I could do this joke. I was not mentally okay with this, and there was a chance that I might have let myself get to have this done, because like I've had that happen more than once. Especially like I learned to stop telling homeless people in Boston that I didn't have cash, because one guy asked me for money and I was walking past the line at the McDonald's, because it was in the train station or the bus station or whatever. It's like, I'm sorry, I don't have any cash. And he goes, well, they take credit. And I fucking bought him breakfast.
Wow.
Because he just put me on the spot that I had said I didn't have cash instead of no.
Right.
And so I was like, fine, have an orange juice and a sandwich. Fine. I let somebody bully me into buying them breakfast. I am just that person. And so when that happens, it makes me very, very uncomfortable. And so I will feel just terrible in this kind of, oh, but now I need to explain, and now I don't want to make you feel bad. And
this is so weird because I see it from both sides now. I see it from both sides now. I would not do that because I am literally eating as we record this because Rachel was kind enough to make me a sandwich and make me a Rice Krispies treat. I hope I would never be that asshole-ish about it.
Well, and I texted you and said, hey, you're coming over to record. Do you want me to make you a sandwich?
You did, yes.
So it's not like you walked in and you were like, where's my sandwich?
Right. Oh,
yeah,
absolutely.
It just was a thing where I know that I will overstep my boundaries and let other people overstep my boundaries in an attempt to keep the peace, to maintain safety and calmness, and to maintain a relationship. I have to have very strong boundaries, and I have to hold them, even though it makes me cry when I am, like, by myself that I had to do that. And so, thank God, I am not, like, dealing with all the same name stuff that all of these people were dealing with. I mean, I realized we derailed for a minute.
Yes, sorry. Welcome to Real Life, Real Therapy with Rachael and Roxanne.
So, like, I can only imagine, with how sensitive I am, that, like, when they talked to Elena Coburn, whose name was spelled Cockburn, and they talked to another woman with the last name of Hooker, who had stories about when they realized that their names had a sexual connotation, and what that was like growing up. And, like, I can only imagine how I would have responded to that. And they talked to a psychologist in the making of this movie who said people who have names that are sexual in nature, whether it is obvious or, like, it becomes slang later.
Slutsky or Hooker.
Yeah.
Right. Or even gay.
Have a tendency to either become almost asexual in that I do not want to be in this situation with anybody because this has just been torment my whole life, or they become hypersexual.
Lean into it.
Lean into it. And like we saw with the gentleman whose last name was Gay, he leaned so far opposite to prove he wasn't gay to the point to where he hated himself and developed a drinking problem.
Like the guy that I went to school with, his last name was Gay.
Yeah. So it is the kind of thing where a child who is sensitive, or even an adult who deals with anxiety or other neurodivergent issues, mocking somebody's name immediately puts their guard up.
Absolutely. When somebody does that song at me, my first thought is, why would you do this to a total stranger in a business environment? This isn't high school or even college. You're not drunk. I'm not your girlfriend. What is going on here? And it was funny because last week I was in the Uber and I put on Facebook, my Uber driver's name is Beavis. If you are our age, you will know why this is funny. And everybody who is our age immediately made comments and posted the GIFs of Beavis and Butthead and everything. And I was like, this is the total absurdity of life. But I did not mention it to Beavis.
Yeah, you didn't need to be like, hey, Cornholio.
Oh, my God.
Like,
I would never, ever do that. Because of my own experiences. I mean, the man knows by now. He's in his 40s. I'm sure all day long.
You will not be the person who introduces him
to Beavis and Butthead. Exactly.
This is just such a terrible thing to do to somebody. And as the documentary goes on, towards the end, they start talking to people, specifically the Donald Duck family.
Oh, my God.
Among others, that when they said, are you going to pass this down again? They said, yeah, that's when I choose a wife, she has to be okay with the fact that my son's name is going to be Donald Duck. And I'm like, why? Why would you do that?
And I started yelling, you don't have to keep doing this. You can stop at any time.
Well, and can you imagine a kid that's voice is squeaky, whose name is Donald Duck?
Which all boys, when their voices change, they have that year or so of the, oh, man.
And the guy Ronald McDonald, who he was Ronald McDonald the third.
Yes.
His father was born in the 40s, so he was born before the hamburger clown, and his grandfather was born way before. So Ronald McDonald was probably chosen because it was a rhyming name, kind of, and
it was common to name your son after in the 40s, Junior.
Yeah. But his father, upon the meteoric rise of McDonald's and the clown, should have had that cut off thing.
To stop it there, but no, they did not.
And had given him the option, okay, we can call you Ronnie. We can do these. When you are of age, if you want to be Ronald McDonald the third, we can change your name. And I would love that. But you have damned this child to constant mockery every single day.
Right.
And apparently they're not the only ones who've done this, because there was a Taco Bell ad when they came out with, I want to say it was a breakfast.
It was a breakfast burrito or something. Yeah.
They found like 20 men who are named Ronald McDonald, that's their actual name, and had them eat the Taco Bell on camera and talk about how good it was, so they could say Ronald McDonald endorses our breakfast, which as an advertising thing, brilliant. Taco Bell.
Did they like all put them on a bus and they didn't know what they were doing or something like that? They brought them somewhere?
Yeah, he told the story of then he flew to, I want to say Nevada, it's where or Utah, someplace deserty. And he got in a van with the driver and they started to drive, and he was like, he had that moment in his head where he was like, we are not that far from Mexico. I could be being human trafficked now. I could be the idiot who thought Taco Bell wanted to hire me for this. But no, he showed up and it was a studio and it was fine. But yeah.
That's something I would do. I would be like, oh, crap.
And so they're dealing with these names, and then they bring in people who have weird names because they are famous, not because the name itself is silly. But there's a gentleman named Paul McCartney who is married to a woman named Linda McCartney. They are not Paul and Linda McCartney, even though they are Paul and Linda McCartney.
They are American, Paul and Linda McCartney.
And they've said that, they showed up for a work event and got put up to first class on the plane because they just saw Paul and Linda McCartney were coming. And he said at one point he got invited to play a stadium in the country of Georgia that seats like 50,000 people. And he had a moment of like, do I go and just bang out House Cross One?
Right. Should I show up?
But yeah, so having a name that is famous is a different level of weird than the other types of names. And like even Office Space has that line with the guy who is like, your name is Michael Jackson? Yeah. Why didn't you change it? Why should I change it? He's the one who sucks. So, having a name that becomes famous later on is a fully different world than having a name that is ridiculous or sexual or silly in this way. And they talked to a Harry Potter and a James Bond and a Donald Sutherland and a Donald Trump. He was Donald L. Trump, and he goes by his nickname Skip for obvious reasons.
I feel terrible that this man in his 60s has to go by Skip Trump.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Skip Trump. Wow.
But he used it to his advantage, like way back in the day, because he was a CEO of a nonprofit cancer hospital or something.
Yes, a Donald Trump that does good things.
Yeah, and so he reached out to Donald J. Trump and said, hey, would you make a donation based, from one Donald Trump to another? Would you make a donation? And Donald Trump not only made a donation, but also made a video about how Donald L. Trump is the better Donald Trump because of the work he does. And the whole time I'm watching this, I'm like, oh my God. Like it was this weird
this weird 20 seconds of altruism that will never come again. Yeah, I experienced that same cognitive dissonance. It's just, wow.
And then, like, they talked to a guy whose name is Gunther Frankenstein.
Oh,
Who
yes.
lives in Lebanon, New Hampshire. And he is an elderly gentleman. And he actually talked about, at first, the name was weird because it was German. Like, when he was a little kid, he didn't realize that there was a book of the same name. Then when he got older and he realized that this book had happened, it basically destroyed his life. He gets prank calls from people asking if he's going to release the monster.
And his Igor home.
And he actually said that in World War II, the FBI came to check on him because he is German. And that sounds like such a fucking fake name.
Yeah.
They were like, okay, we need to come find out what's going on with you, Mr. Frankenstein.
And that's when we found out that both of us have an Adolf in our family.
Yes.
My Adolf was born around the turn of the century on my dad's side of the family. My father's last name, and hence my maiden name, is very Germanic sounding. You can certainly tell I'm German by it. And my father did experience, when he was in the Navy, some, not bullying, but resentment from other people. So no violence or anything like that. I mean, they were servicemen fighting a war, but it is a great uncle Adolf, or fifth great uncle Adolf, and that was the last Adolf in our family. And who was your Adolf?
He was a great uncle of mine, who at this point he's got to be long dead by now. He was an Adolf, and then World War II happened, and he immediately started going by Bud, and he was Bud forever thereafter.
Yeah, right.
To the point where I did not know he was Adolf until way later, when it was mentioned in passing that, that's why he goes by the nickname.
Right.
Yeah, so it is not your fault when somebody horrible has your name.
Yeah, I mean,
especially when you were born before
a horrible person. Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes there's nothing you can do. And sometimes you can legally change your name, or you just go by a nickname or your initials or whatever, and that makes sense. And sometimes, it just is a silly thing, and you lean into it and the notoriety of it. They talked to a woman named Dusty Rhodes who grew up with that famous name and leaned into that. And, they talked to another woman named Robin Williams about, she had a comment about, yeah, I hate that, but I love my name, so I'm not getting rid of it.
Right.
A difference in the type of silly name you have. The Putzes and the Klutzes and the Boguses.
The Putzes and the Klutzes.
They tend to handle this sort of thing with a little bit of humor. Linda Slutsky and Elena Cockburn, probably not taking that.
Well, Linda Slutsky went into teaching.
Yeah.
She mentioned about how when she came in as a long-term sub in 8th grade, God bless her, when she wrote on her name on the board, she wrote Slotsky instead of Slutsky. Something told her to, and she got away with it.
Yeah, nobody ever figured out that her last name was actually Slutsky.
Right.
And she said her name was Russian, and that, the Russian meaning of it is not anything.
No.
It's close to what we would consider it. And then we talked to a young basketball player from Brazil, whose name was Guillermo Fuch.
Yep.
And I want you to imagine how you think that's spelled, and that's exactly how
that is exactly the way it's spelled. Yeah.
And apparently it's a very common, popular last name in the town he lived in Brazil. And then he went to college in Wyoming. And it's not a common name.
It's not a common name at all in Wyoming or anywhere else in the United States.
But in a show that the arc of history can lean toward better, everybody on his basketball team, his basketball coach, everybody, they spell his name the way it is spelled, and they support him. They don't mock him for it. They are so excited that he gets to hold on to this very important part of himself, and he does not need to change the spelling or the pronunciation or anything. And And that basically the only moment they had that was weird was they were waiting to see what they would put up on the board.
Yeah.
And they put his name up there.
They put it up there, all 4 letters of it.
And,
lights.
And everybody just seems cool with it in Wyoming.
Yeah.
And so, like, that makes me happy in my soul.
Yeah.
To see that where, had he been born 50 or 100 years ago, he would have been mocked relentlessly for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, that's fantastic. I love
that for Mr. Fuchs.
And, you know, over the past 50 years or so, people have stopped changing strange or offensive names. They've kind of leaned into it. And the documentary makes the point that, you know, the grass is always greener. John Jones probably wishes he was Guillermo Fuchs. You know, 'cause that's such a boring milquetoast name that, you know, it means nothing. You're not memorable.
Right.
But then on the other end of it, Smokey Bacon.
Yeah.
She, you know, she really leans into it. She raises money for nonprofits. She treats her name as a brand. And, you know, Linda Slutsky used her name to get into a long conversation with Larry David.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. And Al Dente's girlfriend, her name is Sunny, and her last name starts with a D. And so it's Al Dente and Sunny D.
Yep.
Which is
adorable.
Yeah, it's so adorable. And, like, Stuart Putz tells the story of getting out of a traffic ticket due to his name.
Right.
And, you know, the documentary goes out of its way to explain that a name is not who we are. It's just something we have.
Right.
And that, you know, most of these people are very proud of their names, of the way that their family was, you know, born and raised, and the things that they've done. It's probably very common names in their local communities. My husband and I right now live in the town where he grew up, and his whole extended family is here. His last name carries weight in this town. And so I can imagine if you are Donald Duck III, that everything your father and your grandfather have done and all of your extended family, like, that name probably carries weight in your local community. And he did get a, like, signed Donald Duck cartoon from Walt Disney.
Yeah.
Because he was mentioned in the paper in, like, the 50s or the 60s, and Walt Disney sent him.
Yeah, a little cartoon. That was so cool.
And then names impact things in a lot of ways, not just whether or not your name is weird. Depending on where your first and last name fall in the alphabet, can have a big impact on your career prospects. Having a name early in the alphabet it apparently means that you're more likely to start in school due to what's called the primacy effect, which is where the first piece of information an individual is presented with retains more importance in their mind. So individuals with names that are, like, ranked earlier in the alphabet, appear first on registers or things, may subconsciously be treated more favorably.
Fascinating.
And so, you know, even just that, you know, the Mr. Adams and Mr. Zelinsky probably get treated very differently just based on where their names fall in the alphabet.
I'm thinking of the last name of my ex-boyfriend, which began with Z. Interesting. Very interesting now that I'm really thinking about it, because he has brothers and sisters that I knew in... Things it's now making sense.
You're going to have to put all the pieces together.
Yes, oh boy.
So, you know, it can have a very important impact on your life, even just the where it falls in the alphabet, not just if you have a weird, offensive or funny last name. But yeah, apparently, like, it can be difficult to find a job if you have an odd name. People with white-sounding plain names are 50% more likely to get an interview than somebody who has a name that is more traditionally African-American or has a name that is strange or different in that way.
Or clearly of one ethnicity or another. My dad and I had a fascinating conversation once about the movie stars in the 40s and 50s. All of whom had stage names, because the ethnicity problem was so prominent during and right after World War II that somebody with a predominantly German last name, like my dad, or a predominantly Jewish name, that's why you end up with people like Rock Hudson and Gig Young and Cary Grant. Those were not their real names. Their real names were these pedestrian, boring names. We don't see stage names that much anymore.
Yeah, at least not for that purpose.
Right.
Like Leonardo DiCaprio and Keanu Reeves and some other people have told stories about how they were told by their agents to change their name to something a little bit more American. And they were like, no, this is my name. And they've, knocked that one out of the park.
Yeah.
They didn't need to change the name. And sometimes you get a stage name because somebody else is already working under your name. But yeah, people don't have to change their name for ethnicity purposes anymore. But it can, if you're not a celebrity, if you're just submitting a resume into the ether, like we all are right now, maybe going by your initials or something can be a benefit so that you're not picked out for having a strange first name or
gender obvious. Yeah.
And I imagine that Barb Dwyer, she leaned into it. She uses it to sell real estate. But if she were trying to be an admin assistant or if she were trying to be a nurse, nobody wants Nurse Barb Dwyer.
Right, exactly.
So she would need to go by Barbara. Or
maybe her middle name.
Yeah. So your name can impact a lot of things. And if you are somebody who thinks your name is potentially being a hindrance, if you, think that your name going by, Coburn, but it's spelled Cockburn, and you want to change the spelling of your last name or whatever, like, I totally support that. I also support your right to keep your name if you want it.
Yeah.
But I do think doing that to a kid is mean. And you should not knowingly give your kid a ridiculous name, even if it's a family name. It just seems mean. It just...
In 30 years of professoring and having to deal with literally thousands of names, that first day with the roster, I look at the names and I'm like, I don't even know if some of these are a man or a woman. And I don't know how to pronounce them. And I have to do that awkward Mr. or Miss sound coming out, and then I'll say, could you pronounce it for me? And in my book, I write it phonetically. That's the only way that I could do it. And many of them, especially later in my career, they were African American names or Jewish names, that were not changed when they came over to the country anymore. So, which was wonderful for them because they got to keep their actual birth names, but, or sometimes like, well, my name is, Zapalopoulos, but call me Joe. You got it, Joe. I'll write it, wrote it in there.
Yeah. And for me, as somebody who's partially deaf, I want so badly to pronounce your name correctly. I cannot hear it. I may need you to spell it out for me on paper or correct me more than once, but please don't let me be insulting or say it incorrectly. Please, I want you to correct me, but please just give me some grace. I can't hear.
Yes, I know. At my job, a lot of our contractors are Russian, and they have very thick accents, and they'll come in and they'll give me their phone numbers. And the name will come up and I won't even try. I'll turn my tablet to them and go, is this you? And they'll be like, yeah, okay. Let's see, let's do that. Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, but so do you have a strange name? Do you want to tell us about your strange name? Please leave it in the comments.
Yeah.
Or did you go to school with somebody with a strange name? Or do you have like a fun story about it? Please tell us.
Yes.
We want to know. But thanks for listening to Real Stories, Real Problems with your hosts, Rachael and Roxanne. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the value of a name and the Strange Name movie. Join us again next week for a glimpse into another financial problem and a documentary all about it. If you enjoyed our show today, please remember to like, subscribe, and leave us a review on your podcast app. Thanks for listening. See you again next week.
Bye for now.